onto the grass, and Hamilton's had a massive crash, and he's crashed into his teammate.
Just 200 meters into the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix, two teammates and title favorites collided spectacularly. This crash changed absolutely everything the Silver War era. What went wrong? Why this crash reshaped the entire 2016 season and the relationship between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton inside the team? I am Danny Lozano, the creator of the Silver War documentaries. Very welcome to a new episode of the Silver War Stories 2016 Spanish Grand Prix. That Spanish Grand Prix was really important for Lewis Hamilton. After 4 races, Lewis was in the championship 43 points behind Nico Rosberg. Rosberg won absolutely every single race from race 1 to race 4 in Russia.
Hamilton crosses the line, he's on pole in 2016.
Lewis Hamilton started on pole position and, as you know, Nico Rosberg passed Lewis Hamilton in the race start.
Round the outside goes Nico Rosberg into turn 1, ahead of Lewis Hamilton.
That was absolutely crucial, I think, to create the events that happened after turn 1. The Nico Rosberg car starts to slow down a bit, like it's losing energy, and that's when Lewis Hamilton tried to pass Nico, and Nico closed the line and both collide into the gravel.
Nico Rosberg and Hamilton's onto the grass, and Hamilton's had a massive crash, and he's crashed into his teammate. The two Mercedes come together as Hamilton covers his hands over his eyes.
That was a very important moment in the Silver War story, you know. The Nico Rosberg's car suffered some kind of D-rate problem. It's about the settings of the Nico Rosberg's car were not in the right mode in the race start. That's why Hamilton was able to catch so quickly Nico Rosberg after he passed him in turn 1.
And he had a D-rate. Basically made a mistake and started in the wrong engine setting.
My mode was definitely in the incorrect mode, yes.
Probably one of the most serious crashes Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton had during the whole Silver War era. That was really important for the championship, but not only because of the points Hamilton and Rosberg lose and polemic around, you know. What that crash defined in the Silver War context was this is full war. From now, full attack. From Nico and Lewis, in the fierce competition they have, they reach the maximum level, you know. From now, I will fight with you in the hardest way possible.
You know, went for the usual racing driver action of closing the inside line and closing the door.
I got my wheel and my wing alongside, but I had to avoid collision.
I think we are all agree that the movement of Nico Rosberg was really bad. Lewis Hamilton went for it. Nico closed the door so quick. I think Hamilton had no reaction time to avoid the crash. All we are agree with that. If it's true that they have D-rate problems or deployment energy problems, that helps to understand why he tried to close the door as soon as possible. Because if he realized he was losing energy, it was like an instinctive move. I think it's a chain reaction of multiple events and factors that you have to think about it in just 2-3 seconds, meanwhile you are driving the car. And I can understand both in this maneuver, but obviously Hamilton has zero responsibility in the crash. He just went for it and Nico closed the door. But as I said, I can understand Nico and the situation he had with the deployment of the car, and the instinctive thinking as a racing driver for him was, let's try to blow the inside.
We saw some on board with Anthony Davidson, and he saw that Nico was maybe distracted by changing that setting, so saw you too late. So do you lay any blame anywhere?
I'm not going to get into it.
Lewis's move, he said there was more room on the right, so he went for it because he was in the correct mode and had the power. You think you lay the blame at his door, basically?
I didn't say that.
You can see in the details in the footage I used for the documentary, one moment when both jump out of the car into the gravel and Lewis Hamilton tried to put his eyes on Nico Rosberg, and Nico is like he wants to avoid Lewis Hamilton's side. Nico Rosberg tried to avoid Lewis Hamilton even in that moment. It's like Lewis Hamilton is saying, what did you do, Nico? And Nico Rosberg is like, wow, I know this was really serious and it's not nice to see, and I think something really bad happened and maybe I'm the main protagonist of this crash, you know. That's all interpretation from myself, but it's like Nico Rosberg, you can see in the footage how he really wanted to avoid that moment, you know. In the post-race interviews, especially Nico Rosberg, you can see these faces, so representative, that is so uncomfortable, trying to respond what happened, try to clarify the movements he did to defend the Lewis Hamilton position, that in Nico Rosberg you can see much more the uncomfort. In Lewis Hamilton you cannot see that. In Lewis Hamilton's face is like, okay, I tried to pass Nico and he blocked me. In that moment I think Lewis Hamilton knew that he has zero blame there, and he just was to try to give his perspective of the crash. That situation for Lewis Hamilton was terrible because both drivers scored 0 points in that Grand Prix, but the advantage in the championship was for Nico Rosberg, 43 points advantage. If Lewis Hamilton will be able to pass and to win that race, that will be 7 points more for Hamilton over Nico Rosberg. And remember, the championship was decided at the end by only 5 points between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton. Every event that happened during the 2016 Silver War could change the story, the full outcome of the championship and of the battle. The Spanish Grand Prix changed for me everything, not in the relationship, but yes, in the championship context of the 2016 season. This crash in the Spanish Grand Prix means the peak of the rivalry, the peak of the tension, and the peak of the Silver War story. The Silver War really was complete in this moment. And this is extremely interesting. I found a video that made Nico Rosberg on his YouTube channel analyzing the crash of the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix.
Not a good one. Awesome run down into turn 1. Outside of Lewis, normally that always goes wrong, but I said I'll just try it one.
Yeah, the overtake by the outside was extremely good, it's true. And here is the moment.
More time, and then I got the D rate.
He said, I got the DA rate. That was what I was talking about previously.
Oh my god. That was a tough day. Oh my god, that was a tough day.
It has to be terrible. You are teammate of Lewis, you crash each other. It has to feel really, really bad.
Not happy faces. Just on the limit, you know, it was sort of a racing incident in the end.
Yeah, he said that is racing incident. I'm sure some Lewis Hamilton fans don't think the same. I'm not sure what is the opinion of Lewis about it. If he really had that problem, I can understand a bit more that incident.
I closed a bit late and Lewis went in a bit.
But he said, I closed a bit late. That's true. That's why Lewis Hamilton has not time to react. And that's why they collide.
Too aggressive, well, a lot too aggressive, and I closed a little bit too late. And
it's very, very honest, Nico Rosberg, I think, admitting that.
That's it. And then he spun, and I didn't know where he was anymore, and suddenly just boom, something hits me and just takes me right off. And,
look at the face. This is what I was talking about. Nico Rosberg is really expressive. He cannot lie about what he's feeling. He has not a poker face.
Yeah.
And the moment this footage, I picked it for my documentary, The Silver War, opening up the door in the Mercedes box. Probably here is where Lewis and Nico were discussing with the team, with Toto Wolff, about what happened, and probably he will explain now.
And then afterwards, sitting in the room there, watching the replay on the laptop again, just trying to understand better what happened and everything. Because then we had to go to the stewards and we had the team internal discussions and everything, and that was real complicated.
Wow, it should be a very long afternoon. Then with the media, wow.
That was real complicated. And I was also gutted because I had won 7 races in a row at that point, and this was going to be my 8th race in a row. And I think Vettel's record is 9, so I was getting very, very close. So that's also that was also a real pity.
Wow, that's super interesting. This is race 5, it's counting the races he won at the end of the 2015 season, because at the end, in my documentary, you can say transition to the Silver War. He won the final 3 races, Brazil, Mexico, Abu Dhabi, and then starting the 2016 season, he won in Australia, then he won in China or Bahrain, I don't know the order. Russia, the Spanish Grand Prix was the 5th round, so if he would won it, it would be 8 races in a row. At that time, the record was in 9, Sebastian, and now actually, I'm not sure. I think it's 10 by Max Verstappen, but I'm not sure if it's 10 or 11. I don't remember now. But it's true that Rosberg was close to beat that record. I never thought about that. It will be an awesome record. But anyway, he won 7 races in a row. That's that's impressive anyway. For me, as a creator, this crash in the Spanish Grand Prix 2016 was the moment and the event because I made the Silver War documentary. my first Silver War documentary in 2016. At that time, I was making it. I was starting to make it. I have no idea if it would be so really exciting to watch, because at that time Rosberg had massive advantage in the championship. But 1 week later, that happened.
The two Mercedes come together.
I think in that moment was the moment when was born the Silver War documentary and the Silver War story on internet. You know, that precise moment where I watched that accident on TV was the moment where I said, I have to make a documentary about this situation, about this championship, and about Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton in Mercedes. Unfortunately, it's not something we really want to see. We are not expecting to watch or to see crashes between F1 drivers. I don't want, I hate it. But in the context of the documentary, obviously was spectacular, that crash, to create the story around the Silver War and to try to explain to people who is not Formula 1 fan why this rivalry was starting to be so legendary at that time in 2016. You can get the official t-shirt I'm using to make this video. If you would like to be part of the Silver War story, link to the store available here. And in this video, you can watch more Silver War F1 stories. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video. Bye bye.